The first warning sign wasn't a dead fish. It was a silence. That lake had always been alive. Frogs croaking at dusk, birds skimming the surface, water rippling even when the wind stood still. But that morning, when I walked down to the shoreline with my fishing rod slung over my shoulder, it felt wrong. No movement, no sound, just glassy water, reflecting the sky like a mirror hiding a secret. I remember thinking, this place feels like it's holding its breath. I cast my line anyway. Nothing. Not a nibble. Not a ripple. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I reeled in and noticed something drifting near the reeds. A fish, belly up, eyes clouded white. Then another, and another. By the time I reached the dock, there were dozens. That's when I smelled it. Not rot, not algae. Something sharper. Chemical, like a swimming pool left open too long in the sun. And that's when I knew this wasn't an accident. Let me rewind. Because to understand why someone would poison an entire lake just to stop one man from fishing, you need to understand how much the HOA hated me, and how badly they underestimated what they were standing on. I moved into Lakeshore Ridge 6 months earlier. Quiet community. Gated. Picture perfect. The kind of place where every mailbox matched and every lawn looked like it had been measured with a ruler. And right in the center of it all was the lake. What the real estate agent didn't advertise, but what the HOA made painfully clear, was that the lake was community-controlled. Fishing was restricted. Boats were prohibited. And anyone who didn't comply was subject to enforcement. What they didn't say was this: the lake wasn't theirs. It never was. I found out the truth a week after moving in. I was unpacking old boxes when I came across a leather folder my father had given me years ago. Inside were land surveys, deeds, and water rights dating back almost 80 years. My grandfather had purchased that land when it was nothing but dirt, trees, and a natural spring-fed basin. The lake had been dug, expanded, and maintained privately, long before a single HOA board member was born. The community built around it. The HOA didn't own the lake. They didn't control the water. They didn't even have legal access rights. I did. And once I realized that, I did what any sane person would do. I took my daughter fishing. That was my first mistake. At least, according to the HOA. We were there maybe 15 minutes before a white golf cart came tearing down the path like it was responding to a felony in progress. Karen Whitmore, HOA president, clipboard clutched her chest like a shield, jumped out before the cart even stopped. "You are not authorized to be here," she shouted. My daughter froze. She was 8, fishing pole shaking in her hands. I calmly told Karen that I owned the lake. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, please," she said. "Everyone tries that." Then she slapped a citation on my chest. $750 fine. Unauthorized fishing. Violation of community harmony. That night, I emailed the HOA copies of the deed. The next morning, they doubled the fine. From that moment on, it became war. They sent letters, threatened liens, tried to revoke my gate access. One board member even suggested fencing off my section of the shoreline, as if water respects property lines. But every threat collapsed the moment my attorney replied, because legally, they had nothing, and they hated that, so they escalated. 3 weeks before the poisoning, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I know this because a neighbor, one of the quiet ones who never made eye contact, slipped a copy of the agenda into my mailbox. Item number 4, lake usage mitigation strategies. Item number 5, environmental deterrence. That phrase stuck with me. Environmental deterrence. I didn't know then that those 2 words would nearly destroy an entire community. It started subtly. Warning signs appeared overnight. No fishing, water unsafe. Then they sent out a mass email claiming naturally occurring bacteria had been detected. Funny thing was, no tests were attached. Then the smell started. Then the fish died. And that morning, standing on the dock staring at what looked like a floating graveyard, I finally understood what they'd done. They didn't just want me off the lake. They wanted to ruin it. I called the HOA immediately. Karen answered on the first ring. "Oh, good," she said cheerfully. "You've seen the water." I asked her what they'd put in it. She paused, just long enough. Approved treatment compounds, she replied, to discourage recreational use. I asked if she understood that the lake fed the underground aquifer. Another pause. Then she said something I will never forget. That's not our problem. Here's what was their problem, even if they didn't know it yet. The lake wasn't decorative. It wasn't just for ducks and reflections and overpriced waterfront views. That lake was the primary recharge source for the community's water system. Every home, every faucet, every shower, every lawn sprinkler, connected, filtered naturally through the soil, exactly the way my grandfather designed it. And once you poison the source, it doesn't stay in the lake. I called the county environmental office. They arrived within hours. Then the state. Then people with unmarked trucks and serious expressions who didn't wear HOA badges and didn't care about community harmony. By sunset, the lake was taped off. By midnight, the well system was shut down. By morning, every home in Lakeshore Ridge had dry taps. No water, not for drinking, not for bathing, not for flushing. And that's when panic set in. My phone exploded. Neighbors who ignored me for months suddenly remembered my name. People who supported the HOA were suddenly very concerned. Karen? She didn't call. Not yet. Instead, the HOA sent out a message blaming me, claiming I had tampered with the lake, that I caused a contamination. So I did the only thing left. I released the report. The environmental analysis showed elevated levels of algacides and copper sulfate, substances commonly used in controlled water treatment, not naturally occurring. And the purchase order? Signed by the HOA, approved by Karen Whitmore, authorized without county permits, dumped directly into a shared water source. Illegal, negligent, and catastrophic. That afternoon, the first lawsuit was filed. By nightfall, there were 3 more. Families had bottled water stacked in their garages like disaster refugees. Local news vans parked outside the gate, and the phrase HOA poisoning scandal was scrolling across television screens. Still, Karen hadn't called. Not until the knock came at my door. I opened it to find her standing there. No clipboard, no golf cart, just fear, real fear. And the first words out of her mouth were an apology. They were a demand. You need to fix this. I looked past her, at the dry lawns, the silent fountains, the lake she tried to destroy. And for the first time since this began, I smiled, because now they were finally listening. Karen stood on my porch like someone who had aged 10 years overnight. Her posture was different now. Shoulders slumped, jaw tight. The woman who once waved fines at me like a weapon could barely hold eye contact. Behind her, Lakeshore Ridge looked like a ghost town. Lawns turning yellow, decorative fountains bone dry, residents carrying cases of bottled water like evacuees after a hurricane. You need to fix this, she repeated, her voice cracking. You own the lake. This is your responsibility. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply asked one question. Did you poison it? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I reminded her of something she had said weeks earlier, standing on that same shoreline, clipboard pressed to her chest. That's not our problem. I told her calmly that I would cooperate fully with the authorities, that I had already handed over every deed, every water right document, every environmental report, and that from this point forward, all communication would go through attorneys. Her face drained of color, because she finally understood the truth. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was criminal. That evening, the emergency HOA board meeting was called, not in the clubhouse, but in the high school gym, because half the community showed up. People were angry, tired, dirty. Parents couldn't bathe their kids. Restaurants had shut down. Property values were already dropping. Karen stood at the podium, trying to regain control. She blamed contractors. She blamed miscommunication. She blamed unexpected chemical reactions. Then someone stood up, a retired civil engineer who had lived there since the first phase of construction. He asked one question. Why did you dump copper sulfate into a recharge lake without a permit? Karen froze. You could hear it, that moment when a lie collapses under its own weight. Another resident stood up. Then another. People started asking about emails, purchase orders, signatures. Someone projected the environmental report onto a screen. The room exploded. Shouting, accusations. Someone yelled, "You poison our kids' water." Karen tried to gavel the meeting closed. No one listened, because power had shifted permanently. The next morning, county officials returned, this time with law enforcement. The HOA office was sealed, computers confiscated, records seized. Karen's phone was taken. Her email history told the whole story. She hadn't just approved the chemicals. She ordered them specifically to make the lake unusable, not for safety, not for health, but to stop me. By day 3, the charges were filed. Environmental contamination, criminal negligence, violation of public water safety statutes. Civil lawsuits followed immediately. Families sued. Businesses sued. Even the HOA's own insurance carrier sued, denying coverage due to intentional misconduct. Karen resigned. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Meanwhile, the HOA begged me to help restore the water system. They needed access to the lake. My lake. They needed permission to install emergency filtration. My permission. They needed time, money, silence. I gave them exactly one thing. A choice. I would allow remediation under my supervision with independent experts, fully transparent, fully documented. In exchange, the HOA would be dissolved. All authority transferred to a neutral management trust. No more fines. No more harassment. No more power games. They agreed within minutes because they had no leverage left. Restoration took weeks. The lake was drained partially. Contaminated sediment removed. Native bacteria reintroduced. The ecosystem slowly came back to life. And when the first fish returned, I took my daughter fishing again. This time, no golf carts came screaming down the path. No clipboards. No threats. Just quiet, the way it should have been all along. Karen's story ended differently. She lost her position, her reputation, her home, sold to cover legal fees. The woman who once controlled the community couldn't even walk through it without people turning away. Power has a way of disappearing when people realize it was never real. The lake still sits at the center of Lakeshore Ridge. Clear, protected, peaceful. And every time someone asks why fishing is allowed now, why the rules changed, the answer is simple. Because you can't poison what you don't own. And you should never underestimate the person who does.